This week's Torah portion is called Chayei Sarah, which translates to the life of Sarah. So it's a little strange that 2 lines in, Sarah dies. The dramatic irony here feels significant. What can we learn from Sarah's life in her death? Just last week, we read the story of the binding of Isaac. This is the story in which Abraham heeds God's instruction to take Isaac, Sarah and Abraham's only son, up a mountain and sacrifice him at the altar. Unsurprisingly, Abraham does not consult Sarah before making this decision. Now, as we all know, God intervenes at the last minute. Abraham ends up sacrificing a ram instead, and Isaac returns home physically safe. But Sarah never speaks again. Every year I read these stories, something different speaks to me. This year, I am hearing Sarah calling out from her silence, issuing a warning. Don't keep it in like I did, Sarah is saying. Let it out. Heal, grow, persevere. We have all witnessed so much trauma in the last few years. For some of us, the pain has been personal. Illness and loss, relationships ending, financial struggles. For others, the trauma has been secondhand, but the pain is still very real. We have seen mothers and fathers burying their children. We've heard anti-Semitic rallying calls ringing out in the public sphere. We've watched violence break out across the world and natural disasters devastate entire communities. We see it all every day on streaming, on social media, in the news. We are seeing so much more than we were ever meant to hold. It's too much. We aren't meant to be containers of pain. We are meant to be vessels of divine creativity. So we need outlets to process through the pain, to not let it remain stuck in our bodies and our souls, to allow space for joy, for healing, and for hope. As should not be surprising, our tradition teaches that this kind of processing is best done in community. Actually, one of my teachers in Israel told me, the sanctuary is a great place to cry. The rabbis of the Talmud agreed with this. They explain that when the Jewish people is immersed in distress, if someone decides to separate from the community, 2 angels will place their hand on that person's head and proclaim, "This person separated from the community, so he will not be able to see the consolation of the community." In other words, you cannot access the healing elements of community if you do not engage actively with the community. Now, the rabbis go on to cite Moses as an example for how to engage properly in this kind of communal processing. You see, when the Israelites were at war, Moses brought a rock to sit on, they explain. He could have sat on a soft pillow or a cushion, but Moses said, "Since the Jewish people are immersed in suffering, I too will be with them in suffering." It must have been a really sharp rock. Now, in all seriousness, the rabbis are touching on a profound truth, that shared pain is easier to bear, and that we, as members of this sacred Jewish community, have the privilege and the responsibility both to share our pain and to hold the pain of others. As the rabbis conclude, those who are distressed together with the community will merit seeing the consolation of the community. When we engage with our community, we can access its healing and its strengthening powers. This isn't simply a religious truth, but a scientific one. Psychologists have studied the relationship between silence and trauma, and they've consistently found that people who choose not to talk about what they've experienced, they experience more intense symptoms of post-traumatic stress than those who are able to share their stories. Part of recovery for these patients involves what Dr. Maria Ritter coins unsilencing. It's exactly how it sounds, a process by which survivors are able to share their stories in a safe and supportive environment. Now, unsilencing, I really love that word, unsilencing. It's not something that we can do alone. It is an inherent act of community to be heard and to listen. And somewhere in this process of sharing and listening, of relating and understanding, is divine healing. There are opportunities to do this communal work of unsilencing here at Wise Temple. Recently, the civic engagement team has held listening sessions as part of a broader campaign with RAC Ohio to determine our priorities in the coming year. The question for these sessions is, what have you seen in the public sphere that has caused you fear, pain, or anger? Now, while the explicit goal of these sessions has been to gather information, what's actually been happening has been incredibly meaningful in and of itself. People have been sharing their experiences openly and vulnerably and validating each other's experiences with empathy, compassion, and understanding. And even though we are discussing the topic of fear, pain, and anger, there have been moments of joy and laughter too. Sometimes community can better hold the contradictions of life, of joy and pain at the same time, than any individual can on their own. I have found these sessions to be profoundly moving. Pain, fear, and anger, when shared, transform into the foundations for growth, for connection, and for relationship. And if this is an experience that interests you, there is still one more listening session coming up on Sunday, November 23rd. Now I wonder, what would Sarah have said if she had come to a listening session? Would she have shared the anger she felt at God for planning such a cruel test for Abraham? Would she have shared the betrayal she felt that Abraham had unilaterally decided to follow God's instructions? Would she have shared the sorrow she felt looking into her son Isaac's eyes and sensing that he will never return to the innocent child she knew? And if she had been able to share her suffering with a community, would her story have ended differently? So maybe that is the deeper lesson behind the title of this week's Torah portion, Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Sarah challenges us to imagine the life she might have lived had she been able to speak her pain out loud, had she been able to unsilence. And she calls for us to choose that life for ourselves, to choose to be seen and heard in the totality of our pain, the totality of our joy, and the totality of our humanity. So my prayer for us this Shabbat is that we take Sarah's silent warning to heart and answer it with our voices, May we build a community where pain is spoken and honored, where no one has to grieve alone, and where healing comes not from isolation, but from connection. And may we together create the world that Sarah deserved, a world where every person's story is held with compassion, where every burden is shared, and where life in all of its complexity is embraced in the warmth of community. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.